this moment based on our past experiences. It's sort of a lens that we go through. And so in a sense, the idea is that we're sort of peddling the past. And sometimes it's how awful my life was. If this hadn't happened, if that happened, so that's why I'm the way I am, or that's the way my life is because of this and this and this and this. And sort of our excuse for not being all that we wanted to be. So we sort of peddle that, or sometimes we peddle, I'm better than you, it's like that. And we go, I was talking with someone last night, a minister called for just to really have someone listen. And I talked about that most of the time in conversation, what I observe is that people are not really listening to someone else. The other person is talking and they're preparing either their rebuttal to what that person is saying, or they're preparing, oh, you think that was bad, let me tell you about this. There's sort of one-upmanship. And rather than just being present, and I've gotten really tired of those conversations. So most of the time I don't talk, I just listen. Because I don't want to be in that position of just waiting for them to breathe for a moment so that I can jump in with my stuff. And so where I want to be, where I try to be, is in a place of recognizing that I'm connected with God, and that in this moment I want to be not creating my future, but really setting an energetic field out of which my future will evolve. Because you may have noticed, similar to me, that most of the best things that have happened in my life were not things that I planned. It were things that showed up that I stepped into, that were available. And not because I made this detailed plan of step 1 through, 57 or whatever. And so it's recognizing that my job, goal setting is fine, it's great, I love goal setting, because you can create things. But what I've really come to realize that what's more important is creating this energetic field of gratitude you talked about in the Daily Word. By the way, I love your opening prayers. Last time I was here, I took your notes with me. I still look at them. You've got a real gem here with that. So it's creating this field of gratitude, of joy, of healing life, of energy, of love, and creating a field out of which things will rise, out of which people and experiences will be attracted to. So rather than saying, well, I want a new car, because I was amused when somebody says, I want a Lamborghini. I go, really? They break down all the time. We were in Italy several years ago, and they had this big Lamborghini rally. And on the way, we saw all these Lamborghinis broken down on the side of the road that didn't make it to this. And besides that, the insurance on them is expensive. So maybe you want something. So it's like we get this idea that this is this thing that I want, and when I get this, then I'll be happy and live forever after in a happiness. And that doesn't work, does it? Because each moment is really full in itself, and if we're creating an energy field of life, of joy, of energy, then it really doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, what their dance is, because we're living out of this energy. And people will come and go, experiences will come and go, but we're still in that energy. And so that's the thrust that I really want to have in this. And so we've been studying, I'm working with Unity of Tustin. I'm up there once a month, and we're working on Byron Katie's The Work. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So you're looking at each other, So in her book, Loving What Is, she tells this story. It's my favorite story. I tell it all the time now because I love it. So she asked, before her revelation, before her change, before her waking up, people, did you have religion before that? She says, yes, I did. My religion was my children should pick up their socks. And I was devoted to that religion. But it didn't get me any results that I wanted. And so her process of the work is looking at statements that we make. My children should pick up their socks. And so she has 4 questions. So is that true? Well, yes, of course, it's true. That's their socks. They should pick them up, right? Is it absolutely true? That's the second question, that they should pick up their socks. Well, obviously, they're not picking up their socks. So maybe it isn't true that they should pick up their socks. So the third question is, who am I with that thought? Who am I with that thought? Well, my children should pick up their socks. I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. So the fourth question is, who would you be without that thought? Who would I be without the thought that my children should pick up that socks, that so-and-so should do this, that they shouldn't have done that things should be different, that my life should... Who would I be without that thought? I would be peaceful, wouldn't I? And then I'd be grateful to see the other things that are there that make my life full and whole. So I wouldn't be caught up in what isn't the way I think it should be, but be present to what is. And that's the title of her book, Loving What Is. And so she said, what happened then, once she gave up that story, once she gave up that religion that my children should pick up their socks, she decided, she does these turnarounds. And one of the turnarounds is, my children shouldn't pick up their socks. Is that more true than the other statement? Well, it's probably about as true. So another turnaround would be, I should pick up their socks. And she says, is that more true? She says, I think that's more true than the other. So she picked up the socks, and what she found is she had a joy with a clear floor. It brought her joy to pick up the socks. And so she gave up her old story that her children should do it. She goes, because I should do it. And she found that brought her joy. But what she noticed as time unfolded, that her children noticed her joy in having socks picked up. And so guess what? They began to pick up their socks. See, so if we have the goal that the children should pick up the socks, that's going to create resistance. But if we say, where's the truth in here? The truth is, I find joy if I do it. And so again, it's called the work, and sometimes it is work to get to those turnarounds to make them work. But what it does, it clears the space out of what's wrong, living in what's wrong, what should be, what shouldn't be, and living in a space where you can find joy and find gratitude and find life working for us in our lives. So Jesus says this, and this is John 10:10, the thief comes to steal. So in my mind, the thief is those ideas that come that in our minds tell us that it isn't the way it's supposed to be. That says it should be different. You should be different. You should be better. You should be making more money by now. Whatever it is that's the thief that comes. It comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But Jesus says, I am come. And what he's really saying is that I am present is here, that I am present that is in each one of us is here, that we may find life and have it abundantly. So think about Byron Katie's story. Did she have life abundant when she was in her old religion? My children should pick up her socks. Once she gave that up, she had that joy. It came in her life. So it's interesting. I looked up this word, kill, and what the Hebrew word is. It means to breathe hard in order to blow smoke, to create a fire to sacrifice something. And so I thought, how much energy do we put blowing smoke at things? And does it really kill us? Boy, this really kills me, doesn't it? We even say it that way sometimes, So I'm saying what we need to sacrifice is that stuff, that old way of seeing. And so I've got a bunch of P's for you today. So the first is to palliate the past. And the word palliate means to lessen the violence of, or to lessen the pain of. There's lots of different terms. But when I saw that one, to lessen the violence of, to lessen the violence of those thoughts that don't serve us, that don't help us work in our life. And so, we're peddling stories of the past about, if only it should have been different, if you knew what had happened to me, I used to have to walk to school in the snow uphill both ways, all that whole stuff that we hear about. People go, oh me, oh my, oh me, oh my. So, and again, what does that get? Or the other one is the good old days. Oh, those were the good old days. Yeah, when they had outhouses, that was the good old day. Like, wait a minute, I don't think so. It's like before internet, it's like, the kids, my wife and I do substitute teaching. The kids cannot imagine life without internet. They just can't imagine that. Well, it's like, well, we didn't have it, We didn't have it. We had a phone, one of the party line phones. You hear the phone ring, you pick it up to see who else is on the line, listening to the conversation. Or, you think you had it bad. I talked about that one already. And so what we do is peddling these stories, and then we have to protect the stories, right? Because these are our stories. This is the way I am. And so we hold on to them. We gather the forces around them. And then we polish the stories up by retelling. what memory experts say, that every time we revisit a memory, we change it. So the fish that we caught keeps getting bigger. How good that person was gets bigger. How worse that experience was gets bigger. So we polish these things up. We also then preach about, that our position is the right way, right? And then we punish and penalize people who don't go along with us, who don't believe us, who don't support our story. Well, I had this terrible experience, and you're not feeling bad for me, So what we get. And again, there's a purchase price for that. Justifying that. There's a wonderful book that one of the things it talks about is the prior investment trap. Well, I put money into this, so I've got to keep putting money into this. Maybe not. Maybe it's time to stop putting money, to stop putting your energy in it, to stop putting into supporting this if it's not really creating the energy field that you want to be creating in your life. And because what happens is that we get petrified in those old consciousnesses, don't we? That old way of thinking, that old way of being, and we just settle in. Well, my life never changes. Well, because you keep telling the same story. You keep sending out the same energy. Well, nobody will talk to me anymore. Well, because they've heard your stories again and again and again and again and again and again. So it's like it's time to move into something else. And so, living in the past perpetuates the same energy. And so really we have the opportunity to clear the past. And again, no one can do that for us. People can coach us, people can support us in it, people can listen to us, but again, we have to really set that intention that I'm ready to be done with that old energy, that old way of being in my life. And so in order to, it's interesting, along with this, I'm a science nerd. I'm not a scientist. I'm a science nerd. And it's one of the interesting things that are challenging physicists now is that they're not sure that time exists. Which is what the mystics have told us forever, right? There's only the present moment. There's no past, there's no future, there's only the present. And so they're wrestling with this idea of how could that be? Because it's just beyond the way that, because all they see is what they see. And they don't, once in a while you see them step into something more. And that's where the discovery comes, where the new ideas come, because they step out of their old way of thinking and say, well, what if this was it? And then all of a sudden science is led in a whole new direction. And so it's recognizing that it's our time to do that, because this is the moment. This is the moment that we have. No past, no future. This is it. So if we can identify the constructs that we have about our life, the way they say, well, this is the way life is that true? Is it absolutely true? Who are you with that thought? Well, I'm upset, mad, angry. What? Who would you be without that thought that this is the way it is? That opens you up to bring something new, a new way of being, and to release the attachments that we have. Well, but they didn't love me the way they should have. I get this from one of my sons all the time. He says, you weren't a very good dad. And I go, well, you weren't a very good son. I still remember one time when they were in high school and I'd prohibited him from doing something. And he was going to go in the car. I actually took the battery out of the car so that he couldn't do that. So we were almost eyeball to eyeball. I'm about 2 inches taller than him. But he, at that time, outweighed me probably about 40 pounds. He was a wrestler. He was a wrestler. So we're face to face, and we're whatever the argument was, and I could see the thought in his eyes. I saw the thought go through. I could take out the old man. I saw that thought in his eyes. And he could have, because he was a wrestler. But he didn't. But it was there. But it's, we're attached to so many that the way it should be, or the way it should, and to realize that we don't know enough. We don't know enough. As I said before, most of the best things that have happened in our life weren't something that we created on our own. So we don't know enough. Something happens, we go, oh man, it's not what I wanted. But then out of that, there's some kind of growth that happens. There's some kind of shift that happens. They go, well, look what I got out of that difficulty. It's the old phrase, you pray for patience and God gives you experiences, which means you have to be patient for. You pray for strength and God gives you experiences that help you grow stronger. So we don't know. We don't know enough by just looking at the surface of life. And so there's really this invitation to palliate that past, to say, okay, I'm letting it go. And I love this. I remember the first time I heard this. Past is prologue. So if you're reading a book and it has a prologue, it sort of says, here's sort of what happened to lead up to bring us to this moment where the story starts, doesn't it? And then the story unfolds. And so if we can think of our past not as set in this experience, this energy, this way that things are going to be for now and forever, amen, that it's just what's setting up what's coming next. And what do? When you read, you turn the page to a new chapter. And this chapter may say, oh, things get worse. Because they usually do before they get better. And that's, if you think of evolution, is that things go along at a pretty stable rate for a long time, maybe millennia, and then something happens. There's some kind of a catastrophe, some kind of an energy. There's too much oxygen, and then things have to change, to adapt to that. And out of that comes this evolution that moves us up, and then it's sort of a stasis for a while, for a long while, and then some kind of crisis comes and then causes us to reorganize. Because we have the second law of thermodynamics, things dissipate, but there's a law in biology that says things reorganize at a higher level of organization. Basically that's what evolution says, right? Things reorganize at a higher level of organization. And so it's recognizing that we're in this pattern that brought us to here. And there's a wonderful greeting in some of the old traditions. Oh, so we've come up to here. When you see someone you haven't seen in a while, oh, we've come up to here. Because here we are. We're unfolding still in greater and greater ways as we move on in our life. So Jesus put it this way. He said, let the dead bury the dead. Let those old experiences die. Let it be something that you're not in anymore. And what occurred to me really is, and I pointed to it in the meditation, is that breathing out, imagine you're creating a space for spirit to fill. You're creating a space in your lungs, but you're creating a space in your life so you can breathe in something new. Letting go. What do I need to release? I need to release, my frustration with my daughter that she's not doing this or that. I need to release, my judgments about the person that looks this way or doesn't look that way. And I release that so that I can allow Spirit to show me something new, to bring me something new into my consciousness, to work in a different way. Our cartoon used to be out with the bad air, in with the good. Remember those old cartoons? So it's that space of releasing what we need to do. So here's what I wrote. So in the presence, capital P, meaning that presence of God, that presence of life, of love, of joy, of all that God is, we palliate the pain of the past and participate in faithfully projecting God energy into the energy field of our universe. So again, releasing that old limiting energy and saying, now, what is that God energy I want to bring forth? And you may have a specific, you may say, I'm working on prosperity right now. So you may want to think, I'm working on God's abundance. The God's everywhere present within me and around me as spiritual substance. Catherine Ponder used the metaphor of gold dust. She said, there's gold dust in the air. That was her way of connecting with this energy of God that's available to us to create. And so that was, what is it? How does that work in me? What ideas does it bring with it? What's the energy that creates from it? We're living in not enough. Because it's easy to tell that story, oh, there's not enough. Well, in the visible world, whatever you see it's dissipating anyways. It's falling apart. So it's time to bring something new. There's always something new that comes forth. So maybe it's health that you're working on. So rather than, this body is awful, as to say, well, I'm still breathing. My eyes work somewhat. My elbow doesn't hurt all the time. And so what is it that I can find this energy of life, life-giving energy? God life. I love that phrase, God life, God life. God. When I've been trudging up a mountain, when I used to do backpacking, and I was at the point where I had God life. God, it really was a trudge, but it was just God life. But I just called on that God energy, and I got there. It took me longer than everybody else, but I got there. And I've got a picture to show. So it's like finding. I don't want to live in that story of limitation. I'm tired of that story. I've told it too many times. I've thought it too many times. And it'll still come up. It'll still come up. And part of it is because we've absorbed all this stuff from people around us, family, culture, and everything, and we've made decisions about what something means. Somebody says something, and we give meaning to it. We say, oh, well, that's what you meant. Well, we don't know that, but we're telling that. We're making up that story. And so if we can give that up, then something new can happen and work in our lives in a greater way. So palliate the past by being present. And so that's the partner with Spirit. See yourself as a part of God. I love the phrase I use in the meditation that I am one with God, God is one with me. Because again, it's sort of looking at the same thing from a different way. And somehow there's an intersection that happens in my mind, and more importantly, deeper in me. Where I say, I can know this, I can live from this in my own life, working with this. And again, there's this, in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, 12. I was actually reading through the Gospel because we'd been going to Unity for about a year. I got this vision I was going to be a Unity minister. I told all my friends. I had some friends who were real evangelicals, and so they sent me the book from Walter Martin about the cults. Unity's a cult, So I listened to the tape. They were friends of mine, so I listened to the tape, and I said, okay, they have their idea. Unity has its idea. Why don't I read the Gospels for myself? And so I was reading through, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and they're called the Synoptic Gospels. There's differences, but there's things that are mostly the same. You get to John, the Gospel of John is completely different, but I got to chapter 14, verse 12, and here's what Jesus says. The things that I do, you can do too, and greater things shall you do because I go to the Father. And I remember I was so mad. Because I'd gone to the Congregational Church, I'd gone to the Presbyterian Church, we'd gone to the Unitarian Church, I've been going to Unity. I'd never heard that Bible verse before. I'd never heard that. I go, why didn't anybody tell me that Jesus said that? I think it's the most important thing that there is. The things that I do, Jesus says, you can do too, and greater things, because I go to the Father. And so what he's telling us is that's the pattern. That's where the power is. That's where the source is when we go what he called Abba. It's translated in the Bible as Father. And what it means is beloved. I go to the beloved. I go to that presence. When he needed to be alone, what did he do? He went off to what they called the wilderness. Just this place where other people weren't hanging out. Sometimes he took the disciples. Most of the time he went by himself. Every time he comes back from that, there's a miracle that happens that's recorded. So you can do greater things because I go to the Father. I go to that presence. I go to the awareness. And so to see Spirit not just as a resource, or as Sig Paulson used to say, like a big slot machine that has the affirmation, and you pull the affirmation, you get what you want. But to see Spirit in partnership with us, that it wants us to succeed. It wants us to have these divine ideas. It wants us to have this energy. It wants us to have abundance. It wants us to have this so that we can bring that blessing for the world, not for just to fill up our pockets with stuff, but to have gifts to share. And in fact, one of the keys is, Jesus says, as you give, shall you receive. We like to think of the other, once I get it, then I'll give something, right? Once I've got this all worked out, then I'll be comfortable enough to give. And now the law is as you give. So again, because what you're doing is you're creating an energy field. You're creating a consciousness out of which things are going to flow and work in a different way. When I had the experience, I don't know if I've shared this with you before, I was at Unity San Diego. I was at that church 30 years before I retired. And I'd been there about 24 years at this point. And in meditation, I got really clear guidance. Tell your board that you can see yourself as the minister of the church in 5 years, but not in 10 years. So it's like, okay. So I told the board that. And each time we'd have an election, new board members would come on, I'd say, here's what Spirit has told me. And so that went on for years and years. And finally one board member said, well, give us a date. And I said, I'll pray about it and come back. And the Spirit gave me the date, June 30th of 2018. So, which was about 3 years out. So we had all these ideas of what we're going to do to prepare for that. None of that worked. But it was interesting when I finally asked, I said, well, why is it that you want me to give my notice? And what Spirit said is, to me, is that you've been trained in a model of ministry that's outdated, that doesn't work. And you need to get out of the way so that somebody else can come in. So I said, okay, I can live with that, because I can trust that even though I'm not going to have the job that, and the paycheck that went along with it, that so far Spirit supported me through everything that we've done. We've been through a lot of experience, and there's always been something there to support us. I said, well, I'm trusting. So I left. They gave me a wonderful party. It was great. And it was interesting, the second Sunday of retirement, I got a call from Reverend Sharon Connors, who was the minister here at the time, and she said, can you do music? No, it was a text. Can you do music today? This is like 7:01 in the morning on Sunday morning. And my logical mind said, no, I'm retired. I'm not going to do that. And Spirit said, I said, okay, what do you got for me? I'm going to listen. It says, you're going to say yes. And you're going to say, what's your title? What time does church start? And so I did. And so by the time the lockdown happened, after she had left and Reverend Robinson, I was here twice a month. Some of you will remember that. And it was a wonder. I had so much fun with you guys, with this group here. It was a wonderful experience. Of course, the lockdown happened. That changed everything again. But then out of the lockdown, again, I got contacted from Unity of Tustin, because they had a beautiful outdoor garden area. They were doing outdoor church to keep the social distance and everything. And they invited me to come up, and then they actually invited me to come up once a month to do that. And so was that on my mind when Spirit said, tell your board you can see yourself there at 5 years? That wasn't on my mind. And so, and again, there's all other opportunities that have unfolded that, again, I would not have mapped out. But because I'm trying to mostly live in that space of I'm a partner with Spirit, something always comes forth. And my job is just to pay attention to see what is it, how it's going to work. And so there's, again, from Proverbs in the Hebrew Scriptures, trust in the Lord. And remember, whenever you see in the Hebrew Scriptures the Lord in capital letters, that's their substitute word for their holy name of God, Yahweh. They won't say Yahweh, they won't write it. So instead they write the Lord in it. And so, but what the Yahweh name is I am. Remember when Moses asked God what your name is? I am. I am that I am. So the trust in the I am, that I am presence in you, and he, it, she, again, don't get caught up in that, will direct your paths. Trust in that presence. It'll open the way for you, because you've set that consciousness, you've trusted, you're working it in your life. So again, Jesus put it this way. It's usually translated as the kingdom of God, the kingdom of God. But some people say, well, think of it not as like an earthly kingdom, but a domain, a space, an energy field. So seek first that energy field, that domain of God, and all these things will show up. All these things will be added to you. It's like, don't worry about making it happen. It's there. And so here's a way for us to say it together. Centered in this moment, I consciously choose to express this Christ Spirit. So say that with me, please. Centered in this moment, I consciously choose to express the Christ Spirit. So if we can be that. So again, we're palliating the past. We're partnering with Spirit and say, so what I'm here to do is to be present. To be present, to not just receive, but to put this energy in motion, the highest consciousness I can. Yes, there's going to be times I'm going to be angry, frustrated, upset. That's so-and-so, Did you know what they did? They did it again. And then I go, wait a minute, is that the energy I want? I'm tired of that story, aren't I? Yes, I am. So I'm going to bless them. I'm going to bless me. I'm going to bless the person I just told that to, so that they don't have to live with it and go on and telling that story for me. It's like we create recruits to tell our story. We don't need to do that anymore. We want to be centered in this moment with that. And so with that, we're setting patterns, energy patterns. I know that as I was looking at the slides, that the 12 powers has been one of the themes this week. And so I thought I would talk about setting a field of light for patterns to emerge. So many times we think of the 12 powers and the stations that they are in the body. Think of them this way, that this represents God. This is not what God is. This just represents God. That allness is there. And then our God self as a part of that. And we have these 12 faculties, these 12 energies, these 12 aspects of consciousness that we can move into life. What usually happens, we look at life and we go, well, that sucks. Right? Something happens we don't like with that. And so that's where our attention is instead of on this. And so because that's where our attention is, that's the energy that we keep recreating. But if our attention is on God and these aspects that we can express through our personhood, through our body, it will project out onto the screen of life. It's like, think of this almost like a movie. This is the light in a movie projector. The light is just the light, right? Yeah. Do you want the light to change to green? No, we want a white light, don't we? It's the light. What changes is what we put in front of that. The film that goes in front of the projector is what changes what shows up on light. There's stories that in the early days of moving pictures, out in the West, when a movie would come on, and there'd be a villain on the screen, and somebody take his gun out and shoot at the screen. And all it did was make a hole in the screen, right? The movie kept going. Because so many times we're busy with what's out on the screen, and we're not busy with consciousness that's creating what's out on the screen. So this is what we want. So just to think of these, you have these gifts. You don't need to get them. You don't really need to grow them. You just need to express them, to let them work out in your life. So that's how you play it. So again, give and it'll be given to you. Give and it'll be given to you. That's the way it works. So we persist to that. And again, creating that space. So then my last P, well, maybe my last one. No, I think it is the last one. Is participate with what is. And again, not just what is in the apparent world, but with what is in that spiritual world. Participate with. Again, partner with it. See that you're a part of it. Instead of protecting and polishing the past, it's really to be established in this moment as a potent moment, a moment of power. And it's almost what I see is like out of the piles of stuff in our life is something is emerging, something clear. The light is emerging, the joy is emerging, the love is emerging. We don't need to worry about what's wrong with the stuff in the pile. Just be looking for what's the light coming with this. And so what I do, I have two questions that I work with. God, what do I need to know right now? And I stop and listen. And the answer comes sometimes just as a feeling, sometimes as words, once in a while, rarely as a voice. But it's mostly just an understanding that comes, and then I'll ask, what do I need to do right now? So many times, this first question, what do I need to know right now? The answer I get is, you're fine right now. You're safe. And what do I need to do right now? Don't worry, it'll all work out. And I used to hate that answer. Because I wanted an answer like I want a plan, I want the steps, I want the unfolding, but I've learned I don't know enough. I don't know enough to make it work out for my good. I start doing stuff and then it doesn't work. And so I step back and God, if you got something for me to do, show me and I'll do it. Until then, I'm going to wait. I'm going to shut up and wait and listen. Sometimes there's clarity. One time I said, what do I need to know right now? It's all going to work out. What do I need to do right now? The answer I got was, take out the trash. It was trash day. It needed to be done, but where we were at that time, the trash came in the afternoon, so it didn't need to be done in the morning when I was meditating. But Spirit said, and so I argued with Spirit. No, I want a spiritual answer. I don't want to take out the trash answer. And Spirit said, okay, whatever. And I said, okay, I'll take out the trash. So I take out the trash. My neighbor's taking out his trash at the same time. I end up talking with him. And in our conversation, the questions, the situation that I was asking about, it's not like it came up. He didn't say anything that was specific to it, but something that he said gave me insight in what I was working on. Now, if I hadn't taken out the trash, I wouldn't have had that conversation with him. I wouldn't have gone to his door. If Spirit had said, go knock on your neighbor's door and talk to him, I would not have done that. But Spirit figured that I could follow the direction to take the trash out. So that's all the information it gave me. That's all the information I needed. So it's learning that this folds, it works in our lives. So again, let's go back to this one. Centered in this moment, I consciously choose to express the Christ Spirit. Together? Centered in this moment, I consciously choose to express the Christ Spirit. And we have this sense that we want to have meteoric success. We want to go from here to there, in one easy step, right? And that's not the hero's journey. It's not the heroine's journey. It's a meandering path that has more back steps than forward steps, it seems many times. And so just to trust that it's this plodding process. It's like, okay, here I go. I'm God. What do you got for me? Okay, what do I do? Take this step, okay? Here I am, God. What do you got for me? Oh, take this step, okay. And let that be enough. Moment by moment, let it be enough, and Spirit will reveal what you need. So here's another way of saying it. I am a clear conduit for the gifts of God. I am radiating blessings to all. Let's say that together. I am a clear conduit for the gifts of God. I am radiating blessings to all. So let's just breathe with that for a moment. I'm a clear conduit for the gifts of God. It's not about me. I'm just the channel. I'm just trying to be as open as I can, get my stuff out of the way so that what God is can move through. Releasing my resistance, releasing my judgments, releasing what I think to be true. Because again, I don't know enough. I just want to be a conduit. Let go, let it be open for that. And then it just happens that then I radiate, right? I can't help it because I've gotten myself out of the way. And let God be God and working with that. So, again, going back to the title, Peddling the Past or Priming the Future. Again, I still catch myself with those old things, but I catch myself. So I don't go on and on and on and on and on and on. I catch myself. Say, no, that's not what I want. I want peace. Set that aside. So, in this moment, peace, peace, peace. I want love. It's hard to love that person. Oh yeah, I've got this whole list of why it's hard to no. Set that aside and just be love. Whether you think they deserve it or not, doesn't matter. God loves them, you might as well love them too. So, joy. Do you want joy? It's not because you have something or do something, it's because you are a part of joy. I like St. Paul used to say, J-O-Y, just open yourself. Just open yourself, and that joy is right there. You want abundance? Abundance is here. There's so much good, not only visibly, but invisibly. More than enough. More than enough. But if we live in a consciousness of lack, then that's all we see. And the more we tell that story, the more that we see. We live in gratitude. That shifts the energy in so many ways. I heard someone say once, and he said it in a political context, the progressive agenda always advances. And I've thought a lot about that. And one of the examples that comes to my mind is in our country, giving women the right to vote took how many years when they first started asking for it? Over 100 years. The United States of America was one of the last countries on our planet to give women the right to vote. But the progressive agenda always advances because it's right. So eventually it will prevail. And so it's the same thing with our spiritual adventures as well, that progress of spirit will always advance. Now it may not look like that to us. It may look like it's taking a whole lot longer than it should, but things have to go in place. You plant a seed, you plant an acorn, when you get an oak tree, not next Wednesday. It's going to take longer than that. And you can yell at it, you can do effort, you can do whatever you want. It's still going to take as long as it takes. And so can you create conditions that help it be successful? Yes, you can. But you also have to allow it to unfold. And so it's recognizing that there's a spiritual evolution that is inevitable. And we don't know enough in this moment to know what's next, but we can ask what our part is. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? And we can make that shift for ourselves. In Luke chapter 1, verse 37, Jesus says, "For with God all things are possible." That doesn't mean that you can say, oh, God, I want this and this and this and this. No. With God, there's possibilities. We want to live in those possibilities of what God has for us. Not peddling the past, but priming ourselves, priming our relationships, priming our jobs, priming our finances, priming our life with what God is, so that out of that consciousness, out of that field of energy, emerges naturally, easily, joyously, the gifts of Spirit. Let's take a moment of prayer. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, God, for our willingness to let go, our willingness to move into a different way of knowing and being, knowing that there's stuff that we need to release. And as we breathe out, we make a space for a new infilling. The involution of Spirit for the evolution of blessings. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Well, if I may, if you missed our Holy Land retreat a year ago, if you missed our Unity Village retreat this year, we have a trip to Italy. I know you guys just went to Italy, so this is a land trip. It's 11 days with the air flights back and forth. My wife Meredith is back there with her wonderful stuff that she has copies of this. So if you're interested in just finding out the itinerary, we start in Venice, then we go to Florence, Assisi, which is a wonderful place to go, then Sorrento and the Amalfi Coast, and then we end up the last several days in Rome. So we cover, you're not going to see all